Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. Today, I have rotated the recording device a little bit here. Hopefully, that turns out okay. So, Pavel asked me last week about code review in small teams because he feels like it's not very productive and it gets in his way. And is asking how I feel about that. So, I really like code review, and I think there are many forms of it, and I like many of the forms. I'm a particularly big fan of asynchronous code review, where where you have like people following the commits in a project and then coming in and commenting on it after the fact and everything. It's really nice. But I also like synchronous code review, like people giving me code and then me giving comments and hopefully merging it. And I think it's a very versatile tool, right? But it depends on how you use it, because there are a lot of people who use it kind of irresponsibly and just waste time with it, especially those people who argue about like coding style and stuff like that. Like if you end up arguing about coding style in code review, then your project just has dumb process. If you want to stick to a consistent coding style, then just say that we're not going to review any code that is not consistent with the project coding style, and then just give people a Clang format config file and tell them to run that on their code, and then you just ignore any code that doesn't conform. That's what we do in Serenity, and it works really nicely, because then we don't have to have those conversations about coding style, because we just do what the tool does. But like there are people who waste so much time arguing about coding style. It's crazy. And I think that's a waste of time. So, and then of course there are people who argue about like, well, here's how I would do this. I think that's like this thing where I always try to catch myself. The moment I think that I should write, here's how I would do this in a code review, I have to stop myself and think like, well, is this really productive? Or am I just trying to backseat drive this thing? Because you're not supposed to be backseat driving in code review. You're supposed to be helping the person build something good, and you're supposed to like build a shared understanding of the code. So when we're programming, we're producing code, right? But we're also producing metadata about the code that is only in our own head. And code review is our chance to share that metadata with another person. And I think you should take advantage of this opportunity when you have it, because it's so much better if two people know how something works than if just one person does. And if you like nitpick about coding style, you're not building that shared understanding, and that's not good. Because the shared understanding means that another person can continue working on this thing, and then can like help review other code, and it's just obviously useful to build shared understanding of shared code. So it can be difficult to do that, though. Like you have to have a conversation about the code very often. I mean, sometimes code is self-explanatory, or written in a way that gives me all the information I need to understand it. Especially, like, one thing I really like is when code is full of assertions, because when you're programming, then you build up this mental model of your program, and in that mental model are a bunch of assumptions that you know about, and you sort of keep working, and you stay within this assumption reality. And I don't know that. I don't know your assumptions. And it's good in code review if they come out, but it's even better if they come out in assertions and in type information. Yeah, I should have said type information actually. So type information is an even better way because that moves it to compile time. Like if you can encode your assumptions in type information, that's really awesome. Like this function never returns null, so it returns a reference instead of a pointer. Right? That's an example of compile time type information that tells me about the assumptions that you have in your model of this program, because it also tells the compiler about those assumptions. And the more of that, the better, I think. And I certainly, like for me, when I do code review, that's something that I tend to look for. Like, hey, can we find ways to codify your assumptions about this code? And can we be more specific in what we tell the compiler? Like, if we have say that we have some class hierarchy, right? And I'm passing a base class pointer somewhere, but I'm really only ever going to be passing objects of a specific subclass type. Then maybe we can just have whatever the target is only accept pointers to that subclass type, so that then we codify that like that's the only object type that's going to be passed there, even though it would be legal to have it accept a base class pointer. Yeah, but anyway, stuff like that. Building or sharing knowledge of the metadata. That's what code review should be about. And of course, it's never possible to extract all of the metadata about that someone else has. Although it is kind of interesting actually, because like I've been doing a lot of programming videos for a while now, and it makes me wonder like how much of the metadata that I have for myself can be absorbed by watching me programming. Because like I say a lot of my thoughts out loud when I do that, but there's still some stuff that gets stuck in my head. But I'd imagine that if you've watched someone write some code, probably you're like, you have a pretty good idea of what the metadata about the code is. Anyways, that's just interesting. So, what do I want to say? Code review is great, but you have to use it in a good way. Like, don't waste time on nitpicking, and I guess I should say don't waste time on these weird like political battles where someone feels like they are your senior, so they have to order you around a little bit and tell you to do things their way. That's just silly. And if you're doing this to people, then why are you doing that? That's just stupid. Probably you wouldn't listen to me anyway, but it's just silly. Like, if you have people that you're mentoring or that you're trying to, you're the senior engineer somewhere, then you want to help the junior people to get better so that they can help you get better. And it's weird, these things that happen because people's egos get the better of them. And I'm sure that I do weird things sometimes too in that regard. Much less nowadays than what I used to do in the past, because I used to be a bit more worried about my skill levels and things like that, and these days I don't think about it. But anyway, I think you should be happy that you're on a small team, because that means that you can have a lot more time for each other in code review. You can have a dialogue, and if you're all sitting together, then you can have very, very responsive code review as well. I've worked on teams where we were hundreds of people writing code, and then maybe 15 or 20 people were supposed to review most of it. And that could get very, very tedious when you had to wait like several days for someone to respond to a review request. And sometimes people would be passive aggressive because they didn't like your code, and they didn't want to review it, but they also didn't want to say that they didn't like it. So much time wasted on that kind of type of stuff. It's nice to be on a small team because it means that you can take small steps and still move forward. Big teams are harder, you know. Anyways, I guess those are just some of my unstructured thoughts about that. So I hope that there was something useful in there, if you could make sense of it. So I guess other than that, I'm just going to say thanks for hanging out with me on the commute, and I will see you next time. Bye.